All right, do we want to get started? Might have people flow in still.
Yeah, I just posted a quick poll, just to ask how many of the attendees are new to data models. Let's see. I'm just enabling a few other people to talk, so let's see. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start. Thank you everyone for joining the Splunk data model session as part of Fort with Splunk user group. My name is Suman Gajwali, CTO and co-founder of bitsIO. bitsIO is a Splunk elite partner doing professional services. And just a little background about me, I've been Splunking since 2013. I would say it's quite a bit of time, and I love Splunk and try to resolve a lot of provide solutions to customers using Splunk solutions. So let's just right to so we'll get into the data models, data model details, and also I thought I'll cover a lot of stuff within this one session. I think looks like based on the response, we can do a second session, but I really want to touch a little bit basics, and let me check if we have the polls. I guess 50% of the folks are new, and other folks are already using data models. So the agenda going to be what are data models, how data models help with the less SPL search processing language, and some cool searches that utilize data models, build reports and dashboards using T-stats. I have a demo instance where I can run these commands and show you real time. And also overview into CIM data models, and also tuning those CIM data models. So what are Splunk data models? A data model is basically, I take it as, if you have, if you're using this for security, all your network events, different vendors send different network events, and they are in different formats. So you're basically grouping common data into one data model. So it'll give you kind of structure, as Splunk ingests any schema, any type of data. There's no structure to it, but data models kind of provide that structure to you. I come from database background, so I can think of these as tables, if you will. Pretty much you will have a given structure to it, and there are about 10 to 20 fields that you can have, like columns, and then you can use those like regular, similar to SQL. It is a little bit similar as well. So, and once you have the data in the data model, you actually have different ways to do the searches. So you have the SPL, and you can use pivot. Also accelerated data models, you can use T-stats. It basically, when you create a data model, it creates a data models.conf. So for example, for the CIM data models, it goes and sits in the ops-splunk apps default data models directory. And you can set the permissions based on the metadata files. Also, I would take this as data masking also as an option. Like data model can kind of filter out if you consider, if you want to link it with the data model analogy, you can say that a data model is like a view on top of a table. If table has 50 different fields and you want to restrict a user to a certain group to see only 10 fields, data model actually does that. It only pulls what is needed, and it may be 10 fields or 20 fields from your events. So what does data model have in it? It actually has objects. I think in the new I think 7, I can't recall, but the new version would have data sets instead of objects. It will have objects, and it will have HTTP requests, the constraints, and attributes. Constraints is basically, it is going to constrain your data model to have only specific source types. Let's say you're talking about, in this example, web intelligence. You only want to have the network related or web related data. So you're only restricting your data model to collect only those fields, those events that are access or IAS, if you see it here. So constraints are going to be just filters, basically. Attributes are just key value pairs. You just have the fields that you want to collect in here. By default, these are inherited, the time, host, source type. The other ones are the URI path, the URL, and all that kind of stuff. Those are going to be the ones you can customize and use those. Also, the main objects have child objects. So let's say within the web traffic data, you want to have a successful request as a child object. So the main constraint from the parent, this is the actual object, the main object, that will have a restriction only on the source type here, but that will be inherited by the child. So the child object will have that, plus your child object is successful request. So it is going to again filter. So on top of the source type filtering, it will also have the status equal to 200. And it will only pull, when you select this successful request, it will only pull those events that are status equal to 200. Once you build your data model, you have an option to actually accelerate your data model. If you go to the editor within your data model page, which I'll show you in the demo, where you can actually accelerate your data model. Once you accelerate your data model, it actually is going to give you summarized data, if you will. Summarized data in the sense it creates a TSIDX files only with those fields that are in the data model. And as you can see, one of the other benefits of the data model here, this is the query from authentication. If you see the authentication here, it's actually collecting data for anything authenticator related from different vendors, right? So if you can see here, you can see that there's a win event log, audit trail, Oracle has some authentication data. So you can see different types of data with the different formats within these data. sets, you actually have one common data set that represents your authentication data. So that way, I don't have to go for a failed login. I don't have to go to different, all these 6 data sets in a search. That will be a big search, and it won't be user friendly. So the data model is definitely going to help you in that way, and also it's much faster. So once your data model is accelerated, you can use these commands. T-stats. T-stats actually works on your TSIDX files, and it's a summarized data. It's much faster. One of the reasons I have these 2 screens here, the difference is that within the T-stats, you have 2 different types. One with the summaries only equal to true, one without it. So one without it actually gets you more events because it actually gets you the current ingested data as well as your summarized data. When you say summaries only, it will only going to pull whatever is summarized, and the summary happens every 5 minutes. So this one has about 5 minutes delayed. On the left, this one has some about 5 minutes delayed data, but this one has up to the current data on the right. So just acceleration why, there are some stats that I pulled from previous presentation on data models. You can see for a 24-hour period with a 1-hour span, you can see the difference in time. Like it is about 11,000 faster when you have the data model accelerated compared to the raw and regular search to T-stats. Various types of data model searches. You can do these searches on the data model, which I'll go run those searches on the demo instance for you to see. So this is what I was talking about when, if you didn't have a data model and if you wanted to find authentication event, and you have so many source types, so many different vendors sending your data, your search is going to include multiple source types, and as well as your different types of filters and all that. Everything is done behind the scenes within your the data model definitions. Let me see if there is a question. Kyle, if you want to see, watch for any questions, that will be awesome.
Okay, yeah. There is one from Indu.
Okay.
But I mean, I think it's more of a generic.
Okay. Yeah, at the very end, while I'm doing demo Indu, I think you can definitely unmute yourself and ask.
Okay.
Okay. And also, with the data models, you also have pivot options. So you can just click on UI to figure out if you want to see, failed versus success, and all the group by clauses. Business users can definitely use this when you don't know how to do the searches, or if you don't want to write complex searches like the one I showed before, like this. You definitely can utilize pivot. That way you can just click on guided type of setup where you can get your reports and dashboards done pretty quickly. So with the data models, the areas where data models are widely used are within enterprise security or InfoSec app. I think most of the customers that are using Splunk will have either security essentials or InfoSec or or enterprise security. And majority of the times you really don't have to build data models from scratch. But if you do, I think there's documentation on how to create that. But pretty much most of the dashboards data models are defined for you within the CIM data model. And the data models that are available there are cover pretty much all the areas like DLP, you have authentication, network traffic, web, inventory, JVM, a lot of other things. So basically what CIM data models are, they group certain focused data into one data model. Like for example, for all the authentication related, you have authentication data model. All the certificates you have within your company, they will all go into certificates. So, so kind of CIM helps you give that what are all the fields that are commonly used across different enterprises. That way you don't have to build your own and come up with your own. So it kind of gives you that shell. And a lot of customers do also add those extra fields. If they really don't see a field that they really need it, they can actually go and create those or add those to the data model. Yeah. So how do you make the events go into your data model? Pretty much, you do have to look at your data and identify what are all the events that are related to your specific data model. Like, for example, if you take authentication actually has specific fields. I think if you look at the CIM data model definition on the Splunk docs, it will show what are all the fields that it needs, the data model needs. And you might have that field in your data model. I think, but quickly, I'd like to go through this process. So you have an indexed event, like index equal to Windows or something, and then you have to normalize those. Basically, if you have a source underscore IP spelled out, but authentication data model needs SRC instead of source underscore IP. So you have to rename those fields. And sometimes you have to so normalization basically means you have to rename the fields, or if you don't have a field, you create it, create those fields. Also, if you have a value, like sometimes for action, the data model needs that you want to say success or failed or something, failure. So you want to rename or change the values of the data as well. I have one example for that too. So, and then you will check that once you have the tags set. The majority of them are based on the tags. So once the tags are set to your data model or the index event, it will flow through the data model, and then you can do acceleration and then run T-stabs or pivot. Within the tuning of CIM data model, this is huge, where your TAs actually have the slide. If you don't mind, I have the slide a little bit later, but on that same topic, just quickly, I wanted to show you the raw event might be looking like this, and then your data might have, as I mentioned, like you might have the data showing deny, right? And then, but the CIM normalization needs that field to be instead of deny, it asks you to change to blocked. So this is kind of normalization. If you if you think of what normalization would be. So you might want to change the values. And also action. Sometimes your action field may be different, and also your source IP. It may be referred in your TA as source, but most of your TAs that you download, which are CIM compliant, those actually will have these fields renamed. If at all, if it's a source underscore IP, it actually changes your fields to src underscore IP. So any add-on that you download, if it has CIM compliance in it, a majority of them do. And also, I think it should say it's CIM compliant. And once you know that this data is your network data, then you also have to set these event and create tags, network and communicate. Once these the tags are done, the normalization fields and values are done, that's when you start to see the data. When it comes to tuning the CIM data models, you always have to restrict the index. So by default, any data model, it will go and search for all the indexes for your event types and tags. So what I recommend, what I do when I go on implementing any security solution, I definitely want to go and restrict the index usage. So there are macros that you can actually restrict your data model to. So if you say your authentication is data is only in 5 indexes, you would go restrict or change that macro. There is a macro that will be available where you can put index equal to ABC or XYZ, so that you're only restricting your data model to those indexes. Also, tuning event types and tags are huge. So for CIM data models, when you actually download your TA, TA actually gets you just a very open event type search. So event type search might say index equal to, or source type equal to win event log security, and all the win event log security will go into authentication. But most of the times you don't have all the authentication or failed or successful logins not in entire source type. You might want to add filters there, like event code or something, or action equal to failed or success or something. So you definitely want to include or change your event type, and event types are the ones that are going to assign the tags. So the reason you want to tune these event types and tags to reduce the false positives, because majority of your rules are going to run on your data models. So when you have more events in your data models, then more work to do on more events to do, qualified to be searched, and you might end up having some false positives. So if you filter your events based on if there is traffic internally and you want to filter that out, that will also help you reduce false positives. And as I mentioned, filtering that way is going to reduce your events in your data model. And data models over time they get bigger and bigger, and you will see issues like acceleration is still running and then pending to be complete. So you would want to tune your event types and tags, tune your CIM compliant TAs. So TA comes with the event types, but I definitely will want to review those event types and and try to filter as much data as possible. As I mentioned, normalize field definitions. If some field name is source IP, you want to do src_IP. And also there's this one, I'm not sure if any of you use, but CIM Validator is a great tool actually to go and tune your CIM data models. It actually tells you whether your data is compliant with the data model that you have.
Hey, Suman, we have a question from Indu. He's wondering, what is a TA? So a TA is a technical add-on.
Yeah, technology add-on, yes.
Yeah, technology add-on.
Yeah, so what technology add-on does when you have your data, let's say, common data, right? So Windows or Cisco and all those. So a lot of customers have these events coming into Splunk. So you have Windows TA or Cisco TA, which actually knows the format of your data, and it will have field extractions in it, or field renames in it, or lookups, and common knowledge objects are in there. So that's pretty much what TA has. And there is TA and there is app. So you might have a Cisco TA and Cisco app. So whenever you have those, so TAs, field extractions, renames and all, app will have a dashboard component to it. So once TA pulls all these fields, then your app is going to use those fields to build your dashboards, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Suman. So just want to understand. So it's like a TA is like a separate app kind of thing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can download these at Splunk base.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can use my Splunk ES data models into this, I believe.
Yes, you definitely need those TAs
Right.
to do all the normalization for you.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I think I went through this one. So I would like to dive into the demo unless there are any other questions, but I'd want to, I've seen these presentations, but I always prefer to have a real session, look at some data and all that. I hope everybody likes that idea. So I just had a few slides to go over, and I'd like to dive deep into the data models using the demo instance that I have. Kyle, do you see any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned too, like for any data model, you can also go to Splunk docs and to identify what are the restrictions or the constraints that each data model has. So for network traffic, for example, it expects that your events to have network and communicate, and that's the only way these events that you have will get into network traffic data model. If you see authentication, for example, it will have different tag names. If you see it has to have authentication tag, then only that your data gets into the authentication data model. So let me see if I can do this on the actual screen. So you can see here the data model. If you go from settings and data models, you'll get to this screen. You can see that authentication, it's already the yellow symbol here. It will tell you that it's accelerated already. And it will also tell you that status is 100%. That means that it's summarized and it has all the data that you want to search is available to be searched. It's accelerated already. And then sometimes if you ever want to add a new field or something to your data model, then you have to rebuild, use the rebuild option. And update here just tells you what the status is. Like sometimes it may be building, 60%, 70% and all that, and you want to see if there is a update on from 60 to 100%, you can just do update here. It'll just refresh just the screen here. It doesn't update anything. It just updates here. If you look at the actual authentication data model, as I mentioned, you always want to restrict your data. So this is the macro. If you know what macro is, it's a part of your search. So this will have this CIM. I think, let me see if I can do this real quick. So if you expanded it, if you do Control-Shift-E, it expands your macro, and you can see that it's restricting your data to index equal to demo underscore star and audit. But by default, though, I definitely recommend you all to actually look at your this macro and make sure that your macro always restricts your data to specific indexes. So authentication may be only in some of your indexes, and you may have 50 indexes, but you might have authentication data in 5 indexes. So I'd recommend going after this macro, add those indexes in here. That will be a huge performance improvement if you do this. And also you would see, you also see the restriction on tag equal to authentication. And so there are some that are here added, but majority of the times by default it's tag equal to authentication is what you get. So if I go back here, and then also, how do you accelerate your data model? You just click on the edit acceleration, and then it will start accelerating. Once you accelerate this data model, it will tell you this data model cannot be edited, because what happens is it's building a summary data set based on these fields here, and then if you edit it, it's going, maybe you're adding a field or something, then your summarized data may be out of date. So that's why if you ever have to edit it, you have to basically go to edit acceleration, uncheck it, and then you can actually change it. And also, I think you also have option to summarize your data for different time ranges. So for authentication, though, in real time, we will not recommend 1 year, but I think, based on the size of your company, you may want to go 1 month or 7 days.
Sumit, just a question around there. Editing the editing the index macro name that you mentioned just now. So just in case if I have few custom index values, so what you're suggesting is that I run that macro outside, like in a search bar, and then I will call out explicitly what index that I want to search in that macro.
Yeah, so
or I just want to see how I can just
So it should be under advanced search and search macros. So usually you go there,
yeah.
And then you'll find your
macro name in there. Yeah, whatever.
Macro name, and then just edit there. That's how.
Okay, but probably not everyone will have the access to do those kind of things. But
Yeah, it should be done
and I might want to access that macro name. So in that case, I mean, my scenario is like that. So I don't have access to edit those macros or data models, but I still want to make use of them. So just want to understand any method in that case.
So if there is a macro on your data model already set for 2 or 3 indexes, you definitely want to reach out to your admin and say, hey, can you add one more index there? All they have to do is, or this one. So if there is nothing right now, then maybe you don't have to edit that macro. Right?
But my situation is the other side of it. Like I have about 300 values, indexes inside it. And I'm trying to apply to my specific, probably 10, 12 indexes. So yeah.
I think maybe you have to filter then after, like, if you're talking about data model search, you can filter based on the index. And then let's say if you only want to do the data model search for 5 or 6 indexes out of 300, then you can just filter those within your search command. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so filter as in like what I have to, like I have to handle that inquiry by writing where in something like that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so where you have to do index equal to this or this or this.
All right. Yep. Yep.
So let's see. And other thing we talked about was, pivot. How do you, how easy it is to, look at the data using pivot, right? So pivot actually is much faster. So if I really wanted to, as a user, if I really wanted to see just failed authentication count, I just say, give me the count of failed authentication. And I also can say, I definitely wanted to see based on where is it coming from? What is the source? So source type. So I would like to add this and see per source type, what are my failed logins? So you can definitely see here that it's giving you all the information that you need. And then how, if you wanted to build a dashboard or something, you can just, click on the left side. It's very user friendly. You can do pie chart, you can do different types of things. And, otherwise, if you didn't have this, your search looks like this. I'd like to quickly share how your search looks like. So your basically your search is, if you didn't have this, the search is pretty much whatever that dashboard is, that panel that you have right now is the result of this big search here. So it's huge advantage when you're working with authentication data, you know what fields you need, and you're getting data from all the instances within your company, different vendors, and all that. Without this big search, you actually have reduced that to just click few buttons and you have this panel built for you. If you wanted to see the data, you can see the data, or you also just want to see create a dashboard or something, you can use this one as well. And you can always do a dashboard panel, and you can just go create a new dashboard and add it there from here. This is pivot. So let's see. I may have some T-stats that I ran earlier. Let me see. So just to give you some example T-stats, is much faster. So you can do count from data model equal to authentication source. So you can see that tstats is going to give you, or if you wanted to, do by action, let's say. So one of the other things to note is it is actually going to put a prefix for your fields. So if you just did the action, it did not work. You probably noticed that. So you always have to prefix this to action, authentication.action. And there is a macro too. I wish I remember that, but there is a, if anybody recalls, please type it in the chat, but you can actually remove these prefixes. So whenever you want to do like a, where action equal to search, instead of putting this prefix there. But there is a macro that will get rid of the prefix thing. But you can see you always have to mention this authentication.action right here, and you can say also and authentication dot action for success. Let's see, from data model.
I think we have to give data model dot authentication dot authentication.
I did not have the where clause, that's why. So you can see that there's tstats that actually it comes back really fast. You can see it scanned through 5,400, but it's much faster. And it's not only searching from one source type, but it also is searching from, let's see, it's also searching from various other source types. So if you have to write this in a regular search, I would have to say index equal to Windows, source type equal to win event log, index equal to audit, or source type equal to audit trail. So you get the point. So it actually does a lot much faster when you compare to the regular search, and it's very simpler compared to that. And there is another thing that you can do is summaries only true. What I'm telling with this, the parameter here, that I don't care if I'm losing some 5 minutes of data from now and past 5 minutes, but I care more about 24 hours. So if you really want to get only the summarized data, this is one good example where you just want to do summaries only equal to true, and oh, sorry. So this is much faster compared to the one with the summaries without that summaries. So you might have, so what this will do, it will go after your summarized data, as well as it will also go after your current data that is all streaming into your Splunk instance. So that's why it takes a little bit longer than the summaries only. I think now we see 5452, and with the summaries only, you don't have 5452, you have 5449. So just to give you an idea, that's what happens with the summaries only equal to true, or not using summaries only. I would definitely recommend, if you're using ES and terabytes of data coming in, I recommend customers to use this. Summaries only equal to true, and that's much faster. Otherwise, it's actually going after your indexed data as well. That's about the T-stats, and majority of your enterprise security, or let's see if I have InfoSec. Yeah. All your data models or the dashboards within enterprise security and all your InfoSec and everything, they are totally dependent on your data models. This dashboards will be all empty, or they won't show any data if you actually did not have your data models accelerated. So if you did not have accelerated if you did not have your data models accelerated, you cannot run T-stats. So majority of your your InfoSec or enterprise security, or all those, they might you might have the CIM data models. You see the data models, they are working fine and all that, but you still don't see any data in your InfoSec. So that's probably why, because you did not enable the acceleration. And as I showed you before, you just have to go to the acceleration, into the acceleration, and set the acceleration there. Once you have the acceleration done, then only the T-stats will work, and all your dashboards will start showing up here. And as an example, I showed you, I opened this search, and that search backend is your T-stats, and the visualization, probably you can, as you know, you can change different visualizations here. Probably this one, it's using the same thing. It's pretty similar. I think maybe this one. Okay, that's the one. So you get the idea. So for all these things, the CIM data models are important, and you definitely want to have those accelerated to see the data. I want to show you something really cool with the CIM Validator, and how you know that your data model is normalized, or your source type is normalized. So let me see if I can do this. Source type. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to see Windows event log. I think this one. Yeah. Demo. Okay. So you can see it did change the number of fields here. Earlier it was issue fields had 12, but now it changed to 6. So what I'm trying to show you here is that for action field, the Splunk CIM data model, it expects that you have values failure or success. It doesn't, there is no way it has these options available. So you can see it says your data model expects failure and success. It doesn't know these two values. So it just gives you 71% for failure, 21% for success. but it'll give you this indicator saying that for authentication we don't have the values that we're, and if it has normal values that it expects for app, for example, it says win local, win unknown, win remote. You can see that it is actually giving you that your data model field app is looking good, right? So this is some way you can actually check your data and make sure what can you do, or it will give you some comments. That way you know what you need to do to make it 100%. Sometimes it's not possible to make it 100%, but I definitely recommend going after this CIM Validator to review all your data. So there's not just authentication. If you want to do any other data model, you can also do that. Like if you, let's say if you want to go after network traffic, then network traffic may index the Windows events doesn't have any network traffic data. So I expect this to be 43 because they're not common fields in your authentication. But you can get other data sources, for example, let's see. I think pan traffic should have. Looking pretty good, right? So it will tell you only 43% are compliant, and majority of the cases you may not need all the fields in your data model, but you can see the most of them are looking good, right? So
Hey, Suman, I have a question. When you see a field value that it doesn't recognize, how do you go about fixing that in the data model? I mean,
so
eval, right? Or how would you do that?
So you just rename that field. Let's say you know that, for example, I gave you most of the times your dest is not dest. Sometimes it's a computer or device or something, and that won't get any values in here. So what you want to do is you go to your TA. If it is Palo Alto, you go to your TA and then say, rename device to dest, device as dest or something. So that's when it starts seeing this data. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about if you go, you had it up where it said it doesn't recognize these values, like I think delete.
You're saying on the side here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So in those cases, though, I think if there are some events that have that data, and I usually talk to the SME for authentication, right? So as you said, let's see if it's I think it is the win event log you're talking about. Let's go back real quick. Just the authentication. So in these cases, I can tell him, action for authentication, these are not expected values, but by looking at the data, deleted or modified, right? If the SME of the customer side, they say, I would say modified or deleted, I would say failure or something, right? So then I'm actually doing a calculation of action field based on these values. I will say if it's modified, I'll probably have a lookup if I have more than 4 to say If it's modified, then failure. If it's deleted, failure. Success, success, failure, failure, right? So you'll have that lookup to actually normalize it. And then once you have those action, now only action only has these two fields, then it will say looking good.
Okay. Would you do that after it's already in the data model, or would you?
No, that's a great question. So I will not do that because, you know, a lot of customers, once the ingestion starts and once the data model is accelerated, you know, you have to rebuild it again, and it's a time consuming and resource consuming process. So what I'll do, I'll never enable data model acceleration from the get-go. I would do this CIM validation, try to see that this is 100% or close to 100%. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I go back to the CIM data, the macros and add this index, if you will, right? So if you have index equal to demo underscore win event log, I will go ahead and add this index after I do this process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
That's when it will start flowing through the data model, and then acceleration picks up this new events, new source type. So this is pretty cool. This is what I use when I go deploy enterprise security or any security solution. This is what I do, and this I definitely recommend that. There is documentation available as well, but it's pretty simple. If you want to do authentication, then you want to see what is your authentication, where is your authentication data, and you run this search for per source type. So let's say win event log, and then we also had Oracle, I believe. So let's see if I can pull one of those Oracle ones to show you. Right here. So and you can see that Oracle has some authentication data, but you can see it only has 17% of that has data with the failure or success here. Maybe if I do tag equal to authentication, maybe it will filter those out. My hope was to show you something that is, you know, there's no issue at all, but looks like not. But you can see that it still does have 53% that doesn't have any values for action. And that's okay. I think one of those, I think for these, this is a good example where I can show you how to edit your authentication event type. So let me go back there. So basically, to get into your authentication data model, you need the tag equal to authentication. So, so that, we'll do let me do this. Let me do this. Oracle account management. Let's see. So you can see here, I think for authentication, it just does by default like all the source types. This is not a good practice, in my opinion. So this is pretty much saying anything Oracle, Oracle Connect, event type, Oracle Connect, everything goes in there. So I would definitely recommend that we filter, we work on these event types. So let's see if this is the Oracle XML, audit XML. So Oracle authentication, Oracle Connect. So let's see if I can figure out one event type for authentication here. So I think my point here is to definitely, don't look for, try to clean these up. So try to add more filters like here. Sometimes you TM might have the CIM compliance and all, but I definitely recommend that you always have this this added. So let's say you have the login, log out, or force log. So that way it does mean that it's authentication. Sometimes the TM might say anything source type equal to OPSEC audit will be authentication. That might be too many events and not have the right information. So I think if you see here, I think Oracle audit, audit XML, Oracle audit XML, they are filtering, which I like that. So, but I definitely want to also add that you can probably say if your customer is okay, I would want to also say action equal to something in there. If you don't have action, I don't know how this data model is going to give you any value. So if the dashboard that you're looking at is going to tell you whether it's a failed or success, but only 53% have them, then you don't have a way to say what the other events, what are those other events, right? So if you quickly search that data, and your action is failure or success, and it's only in 47% events. So what I want to see is, what I want to ask the customer is, there are 444 events, but only 164 and 47, so about 200 have these values. So if they are not, then what do you want to do with those? So let's take an example where you don't have anything there. So if there's no action field, then what are these events? Are they really your failed authentication or successful authentication? So I take this event to the customer and say, hey, I don't have action field for these events. What do you like to do? Do you want to default it to failed or success, or you don't want these to be in your data model? So that's something I would recommend also to do when it comes to CIM compliance and CIM tuning. Hope this makes sense. I'm not sure if this helped at all, but do the CIM compliance and look at your event types and maybe add this one. So let's see if I do this search. You have 237 events, and if I remove this, there are 372 events. So if the customer says that I only need action wherever there is action has some value, then only I want those to go into data model. So you would definitely want to see that it's only now it shows 100%. So what I would do is once a customer approves it, I would just go and action equal to star and save it. It might take a little bit time, but if you do the same thing with the tag equal to authentication. After some time, I think after it refreshes, after a few minutes or so, you would see that only authentication is only happening on wherever there's action field is with some value. So that's what I would recommend. Tuning your event types and tags are very, very important, and do this CIM compliance using the CIM validator. It's available on Splunk base. Let me see if I have that page open. I think this is where it is. So you probably all know that this is where you can find it. So it's a CIM validator. It'll definitely give you value for your tuning. Let me see. I think I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to. We have 15 minutes, but definitely I'm open for questions. I'll try my best to answer if you have any. If you want to type in the Q&A or the chat, please do that.
Suman, question around tag name. So just want to understand, is it really required that we have to give data model name and also the tag name together? I mean, I'm just trying to understand a bit more about this, like, or we can give tag name without data model name, how they are a bit related.
So tag is so when I'm in the first slides, authentication data model, for example, it's not pulling everything in your, so you may have 300 indexes as you mentioned, and you only want 5 indexes and maybe 10 source types to go into your data model. Your authentication data model is already built with this restriction. It is restricted based on your tag name. So you can look at this page. I can put this in the chat, but this is the page where you can see how your data model is restricted and how your data model is related to your tags. So if you see malware, it will have attack, malware, and attack. It has two in it, right? So you can see on this page itself, you can see what are the restricted tag names, and tags are the ways the data gets into Splunk data model. Your authentication data won't come into here because your authentication data is restricted because the tag is only authentication on it. For malware attacks, any event that has malware plus a tag attack, then only it will get into this data model. And all those are related based off of your event types. So event type does a search and says, all my audit events with this filter should get the tag authentication. And that's how your events get the tags. And once you get the tag, based on the tag, it will actually have your data flow into these individual data models. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. Thanks.
Kyle, do you see any questions, or anybody else have questions?
Yeah, no questions on the Q&A.
I definitely want to cover a lot more, but I think if there are any suggestions, please post it in the chat. On data models, I'm very familiar with it, but I didn't know which ones are useful to the audience, so I just randomly picked the real time, how you use the data models when you're working at a customer site or your day-to-day job, how these data models can help you But if you really wanted to see some other stuff on data model, you know, I'm open to your suggestions. But if you don't have any other questions, I think I'm all done with it. This was my first one, and thank you everyone for joining. I hope this was a value for you. I'm looking forward to do more of these. I think I'll be doing more of the other SPO tricks, and I should have probably put a slide where what are the future upcoming ones, but definitely I'll be posting that soon. We'll come with a interesting topic next month as well.
Yeah, thanks everyone for attending. There should actually be a survey going out where you can post, or you can enter in what you'd like to see for next time. So if you guys have any ideas or any suggestions on what you would like to see, go ahead and fill out that survey, and we can work on getting that going. But anyway,
I think that's all. Everyone, looking forward to see you all next month.
Yep, and I think everyone on here is probably signed up for Conf, but if you haven't, go ahead and go to conf.splunk.com. It's free this year, so definitely should get signed up for that if you have time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mentioned Kyle, but I'm speaking at Conf this year.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was invited to talk at Conf. So
Splunk for Good.
Yes, it's for the
Cool.
Yeah, product donation and stuff. So
very cool. I'll have to make sure I watch that one.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week. Bye now.
Thanks, Suman.